All right, welcome to another special episode of The Unknown. My name is always Michael Volpe. I'm from Chicago, Illinois, and I write at michaelvolpe.substack.com. My broadcast partner is Richard Lutman. He writes at Lutman, L-U-T-H-M-A-N-N.substack.com. From Fort Myers, Florida, in Lee County, named after that losing General Robert Edward Lee. And we are joined by Lisa Fink, who is a state representative, newly elected. You were elected in 2024 from Arizona. You were one of the, I don't know if appointed is the right word, to the ad hoc joint committee on family court orders.
Mhm.
So were you like, did you get a lot of calls from constituents before you were appointed? Were you familiar with problems in family court, or did the appointment sort of like lead you into that world?
Actually, it started before I was elected, even before I started running. I am also president of the Protect Arizona Children Coalition. And so part of that is our mission is to protect parental rights. And I had a gentleman call me. He says, "Hey, I was given your number, that you're for parental rights." And I said, "Yes," but it was more with, comprehensive sexuality education, the schools and all of that. And he says, "Well, what about family courts?" And I said, "We haven't really delved into the family court arena." And I said, "Well, tell me your story." And so he told it to me, and my jaw dropped. I thought, this is not America. This is North Korea. That's what I felt when he told me it was about the reunification camps.
Mm-hmm.
I told this father, I said, I don't know, a whole lot about this, but I'm going to help you. And so we sat together. California had passed a reunification camp ban. And
Right.
so we took some of that language, we brought it here. And then I had worked before with Senator Shauna Bullock. And she had also had a bill in regards to family courts as well previously. So we thought, okay, she would be probably the best person to champion this. So I reached out to her, and we started, working to get this bill through. But and we were successful. It was initially, we thought it would probably be a shoo-in because it passed in California, right? There's the Democrats hold the majority there.
And
Um,
one of my articles about it. You're talking about SB 1372.
exactly.
All
Hmm.
right. So and so what, working with the legislature was kind of your entree into possibly being a legislator?
I've actually have been helping out with campaigns and advocating down at the legislature for years. So
Okay. And
this is
we should note, State Senator Fincham has criticized your governor and sort of Rachel Kestrel, but she did sign this particular bill, SB
she
1372. This one she didn't veto. And you can see some other ones related to family court. Okay. All right.
Yeah, and
So
it was a little difficult because all of a sudden the Democrats started voting against it, and we're like, why are you guys voting against it? But then there was comments made by some of the Democrats, even though they voted against the bill, kind of giving the governor the green light to go ahead and vote and to sign it, which she did.
mhm.
And so that was kind of my entrance into the family court arena, um, just by kind of happenstance. And so that was even before I got there. And then when I was elected, um, uh, Representative Keschel had been working on it, and she had reached out to Senator Bullock, and Senator Bullock said, "Hey, why don't you pull in Representative Fink?" And so that's kind of how that all worked.
Okay. And then I got one other question, and I'll throw it to Rich. You guys had, I don't know, how many hearings did you guys have?
We ultimately had four.
Now, but it stopped. Is that going to stop the momentum? And why only four?
Well, definitely there could have been many more. But I think what we did is we got enough of the information that we needed to make up a report, and then to move forward with legislation to be able to fix many of the problems. So
So you guys felt like enough with like, I don't know, the political. I don't want to call it political theater, but somewhat. And it's time to get going, because the hearings, a lot of the clips are taken, they're thrown around the social media and other parts of the internet. They're all over YouTube, Instagram, those sort of places, and that keeps the momentum going. If there's no hearings, then people forget about the issue, and then how do you get momentum for a bill? Is that something to worry about?
I don't think so, because like I said, we're going to be working on those bills. I think right now what it is, we got to have stakeholder meetings. We've got to really flesh out what to really get to the root cause of
Mhm.
these abuses that are happening. And so right now is, we've got all the data, we've got a lot of the information that we need, and now we need to move forward into the bill making process. And if we spend too much, for me, spending a lot more time on the hearings may actually, inhibit our ability to really get those bills together. Because the issue was too is like we did run into a lot of um, opposition, even from even members of my caucus as well, in regards to some of these things. Not mostly they were supportive, but what we're trying to do now, I think we do have the momentum to be able to work toward a bipartisan effort and therefore get it across the line on various things. So that's kind of where we're at. I don't think we're going to lose the momentum because they're going to
Gotcha.
drop in January and then it's going to bring it back up.
Okay. Rich, you got a few questions?
Following up on that, during the several joint ad hoc committee hearings, we saw hundreds of parents, we saw grandparents, we saw advocates of every type. They came forward with really, in some cases, troubling and harrowing accounts of judicial overreach, of lack of accountability, uh, even very harmful court-ordered therapeutic interventions. Uh, from your perspective, what was your biggest takeaway from these hearings, these emotional testimonies, and how have they shaped your priorities for reforming the Arizona family court system?
Wow, that's a great question. I think my biggest takeaway was that per well, actually, there's going to be a couple. First of all, parental rights. I believe parental rights is kind of incorporated into that Ninth Amendment, and therefore I felt like those were being egregiously uh, taken away. I also looked at one another big takeaway is like in our in our statutes right now to be able to determine parenting time and legal decision making, and that we have ARS 25403. There's the child's best interest factors, and it looks like they're just totally ignored. So we need to make sure that happens. And then also we see my biggest thing too. Another takeaway would be the amount of money that is being basically taken away from these families through these therapeutic interventionists and all of that um, I mean, I had a meeting with uh, the the judge over the family court system, and I did ask her, I said, do you think it's the role of the court to fix families? And she goes, well, no. And so my personal opinion is with these therapeutic interventionists and all of that, it seems to be that they want to fix the family, and uh, and my thing is they should just follow, use the law that's in place to be able to determine the decision making process in regards to again parenting time and legal decision making. So I saw that it was just like there's just a lot of money being thrown around here right now.
I've got this is probably the most landmark U.S. Supreme Court case on parental rights, Troxel versus Granville, and I think it was Justice O'Connor who called it a 14th Amendment issue and said
Oh yeah.
parental rights is effectively due process, and it's a fundamental right that the government should not be encroaching on. So you're right, and the U.S. Supreme Court has weighed in on this, but you're right. There's a lot of money flowing, but can you fix it? Can you like reduce the amount of money flowing in the system? It's like GI Joe. Now you know, but knowing's half the battle.
Yes, that is being worked on at this time. Yes, because how does it help? How is it in the best interest of the child to bankrupt families?
Mhm. Right.
It's not. And
Right.
so it is not in the best interest of the child. And so, yes, we are addressing that. The other thing is what's very interesting is that, if the family needs some counseling, they have to use the court appointed counselors versus why don't they use the counselors from their insurance companies?
Hmm.
Or, if they choose to do that, it should, but there's nowhere in the statute right now that families have to take these interventions to, you know, uh, be able to have parenting time. And unfortunately, that's what's happening.
Right.
Uh, with respect to that, I know that we spoke with Senator Fincham and Rep. Cashel, and they both saw these therapeutic interventions almost, and I think Fitch even said it, almost like at legal gunpoint. They see it as a form of exploitive financial extortion, or extortion described as disguised as therapy. Is that how you feel about it?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, why do you think the governor vetoed the bill?
I cannot get into the governor's mind, but I do believe there was probably, I wouldn't be surprised if there was pressure,
All right.
saying, separation of powers or that. So I am not exactly sure.
Oh, that's not a separation of powers
I
issue. The
agree.
legislature absolutely has the power to tell the
Mike,
courts.
it sounds like a separation of fees issue.
You are the lawmakers. They interpret the law. That's not a. I wanted to ask you about the all three of you guys, Representative Kesho, less than State Senator Fincham. You keep bringing up therapeutic interventionists, and I agree that's bad. But why are you guys focused on that? In my opinion, if you want to fix things, get rid of all the court appointees. Why is it all not? Is it my perception that you're really fixated on therapeutic interventionists, or can you see like a problem with other court appointees? Like, do you think a garden ad litem makes sense? Because if you remove the therapeutic interventionists, they'll just, all of those folks, I believe, will migrate and become a guardian ad litem, and then you'll appoint them to that, and they'll slightly twist what they do, but charge roughly the same amount of money. And I don't know if anything gets fixed. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I see what you mean. They'll just kind of change the title versus
Right.
mhm.
Why are you guys fixate on like if we can get rid of the therapeutic interventionists, everything is fixed? Do you think everything would be fixed if? All right.
No,
So
no,
you're seeing it as a wider problem.
a much wider problem. Yes, yes. And I believe where the big problem is for me, from what I see, is that the not all of them. There are some good judges out there, but there are many judges that are not following the law. They are not making their decisions based on the law. I would like to have where, first of all, that when there's a decision made, that each one of those points are being addressed and writing, so all parties can see it. Also, the other concern I have, and this is I heard this from many parents. For example, the children aren't really even listened to. That was a big thing that came out, and also when I have worked and spoken with parents, that's a big issue, that the kids are not being heard, and they just feel like, well, it doesn't matter. So we need to make sure that that audio and video recording of all of that is happening and is available to all parties, because it looks like that what's being presented in court is not necessarily what has been said, if you know what I'm saying. Also, there's another one. I'm looking at it from, there's different perspectives. My perspective also is, for example, if they're in court right now, there's not a lot of sunshine there in regards to, people being able to see and access. I think sunshine is a great disinfectant. Also, the fact is, a lot of times with these various court hearings, these therapeutic interventionists and all that, they have immunity, right? Well, I think that should change in the sense that they should swear, just as any other witness should do, and be under potential,
Let me ask you about
perjury.
their immunity. Is that law that a legislature created, or is that law that the judges created?
That is under the judges, yes.
All right, so judges in effect were writing law that no legislature said, here's, except in these very small cases you can't sue them.
Like it's a common law judicial power type thing, in the sense that the idea is that early on in the family courts, the idea is I can have a guardian ad litem or a special discovery master to be the eyes and ears of the court, so the court doesn't have to spend time to do fact finding. We'll give it to somebody else who will act with the imprimatur of the court as their eyes and ears. It's morphed into another system now, really, that I think needs oversight. I know that it's been talked about, but it goes back to the core idea of judicial immunity. It's going to be, this is what's called quasi-judicial immunity. At what point does judicial immunity? Now, jurisdiction is something that the legislature can set. So the legislature could talk about jurisdiction to bring claims about quasi-judicial immunity, jurisdiction to bring claims about other things. And so that's totally the province. But in the absence of a legislative pronouncement, you can have the judges rule that judicial immunity and quasi-judicial immunity is boundless. That becomes a problem.
Right. Yeah. And they've done that in a lot of states. Missouri, basically, it's almost the same as judges as far as these court appointees. There was a ruling where they said, even if you prove that there was perjury that led to this deleterious custody order, doesn't matter because they have so much immunity that you can't sue them anyway. So regardless of the alleged perjury, that's how deep their immunity goes. And same thing in Missouri. That's not a legislature did that. The judges did that. And I think you proposed, you also saw these temporary orders as a problem because I think you put a bill forward that would actually make temporary orders temporary. What was the details of that bill?
Basically what it was that it had to be brought forth back before the court. And, we had it for every 90 days, if I recall correctly. And what was happening is that they would just extend it, and then they would also have to determine why they would extend the temporary order. But because what it is that we've had parents who it's been temporary order after temporary order after temporary order until the point that their kids age out of the system. So that's a problem. And and so therefore it was to put some boundaries on that. So it was shorten the time and also explain why they need to continue with that. And again, we call it the good parent is willing to do anything they can to be able to get their child back. And so, and again, usually with those temporary orders comes more with court mandated, therapies or whatever. So it's kind of extortion in regards to getting that from everybody. So.
All right. And I think I got another bill up. I think you sponsored this one. 2762. What did that do?
See that one, oh gosh, let me pull that up. Let's see.
I think it was regarding parenting time.
Was that there was the 50/50 one, and
right.
Then there was the let me look up here. Sorry, I've had several bills on this, so to remember which one I did.
It's to give the children interaction and a voice.
All right, so let me get the bill back up. So I think there's a lot, not a lot of language, there's some language, but I think this was the one where a 14-year-old wants to testify, they have to testify. Is that the deal?
Well, no, basically what it would be is that, okay, part of the best interest of the child in statute currently was to, if the child is of, mature age or whatever, that they can choose which parent that they want to live with. And the judges weren't listening to these kids. So, okay. I mean, there's pros and cons to having the age, but we thought at least, 14, because we were having, 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds, and the judges weren't listening to them at all.
The one issue with that is generally teenagers will pick the fun parent, the parent who's not disciplining them. And so, I understand why a judge wouldn't. I also don't want to cede to the teenager, but generally you're right. In most of the cases, they're not necessarily picking a parent because one parent lets them run wild and the other one is a disciplinarian. And if there's abuse, that's really why they're gravitating towards one or the other. But in your bill, what was required? That the judge know what the child wanted, or was the judge required to do what the child says?
Yeah, no, what it would do, it would allow the judge would, do what the child would request.
Okay, all right. So, but then you are in effect ceding decision-making from the judge to the child. Is that a good idea? 14-year-olds aren't necessarily that smart, even on their own parents. I can understand if you require, if the child wants to go forward, that the judge has to read or listen to them. But to require the judge to do whatever the 14-year-old wants, it's sort of like you're giving decision-making to a 14-year-old, no?
That is true. That is true. But there has been information from those that work in the area that if the court would go along with basically what the child asked, how often would that be correct? It would be correct about 90% of the time in regards to, the situation. So, it's kind of like Jefferson saying with regards to our judicial system, he said he'd rather have 10 guilty people go free than to have one, innocent person jailed. So, yes, there will be those kids that will, I want to go with this mom, or I want to go with my dad or whatever because of this and this. But how many are being stuck in a situation and an abusive situation? So that's where, you got to weigh it. So that's kind of my thought process on that. So, and a lot of kids are saying, we had some that testified, says, hey, we're not cattle to be divided up.
Right. No, it makes some sense, though. I don't know if you want a 14-year-old to be making a decision or make them the judge. And then from what I read, 2256, which should have banned the therapeutic interventionist, it started as a parental alienation bill.
Yes.
Explain that, but also what's your view? Is it real? Do you want to legislate for it, legislate against it? Should we legislate it at all? What should happen with that term?
Well, okay. And other people can disagree with me on that as well, but I would like it not to be used at all, because what was happening is that according to our law right now we have is 50-50. You go off of that, the 50-50. Well, when the child doesn't want to go with one of the parents, then immediately it's parent alienation. Then they went to this reunification camp. And I'll give you an example of one. She aged out of it. Tori. She testified.
Tori Nielsen.
Yep.
Tori Nielsen. Yeah.
Yep.
I interviewed Tori.
Okay. So that when they went to the reunification camp, that they were told, "Oh, your mom's the bad person, and your dad, you need to give your dad." That's indoctrination. So therefore, this parent alienation is oftentimes the catalyst to all of these therapeutic interventions. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And
it's the catalyst to a lot of stuff.
Exactly.
It brings in, and you probably are familiar with David Segui. I don't know if he testified in front of your committee. He, as the former baseball player, made millions. The allegation of parental alienation was the catalyst to like 10 people coming on. Because you know what? It doesn't 75,000, 15,000. He's got it. His last contract was for 28 million. We'll just try to, rake him over the coals and take as much money as possible. I agree with you on that, but do you agree with me on this? Because you probably have dealt with the abortion debate. In my opinion, the intensity of the debate around parental alienation is right around the intensity of the debate around an issue like abortion or healthcare, where there's a lot of like venom and emotion that drives it. So if you take one position, you're going to be hated by a lot of people. If you stay out of it, no one dislikes you because you didn't tell anyone. Because if you say it's real, a lot of people are going to scream at you. I lost my kid because of it. You say it's not real. My kids don't talk to me. My ex did this, that, and the other. You are, you're not recognizing. I just had someone earlier today. But if you sense that this is really intense, this topic.
Yeah, it was intense. It was very intense. In fact, it did get amended so that parent alienation was actually taken out. And I wasn't.
Was that why? Why was that taken out?
Why define it? Because then you put it into law, and then you give legitimacy to it. So that was kind of the situation there. But the fact is, it is being used, and there's no data. I come from more of a data-driven. I'm a functional integrative dietitian. You want to have data, and you want to have plenty of it to be able to say, yes, this is the route to go. And you kind of want to look and see where that data is coming from. For example, in my profession, if a study came out saying chocolate is the cure-all for everything, but Hershey's funded it, you'd be like,
right.
Okay. So even though I love chocolate and I'll eat Hershey's, but anyway, but the fact is with this parent alienation, who's behind it? And I don't know exactly who's all behind it. That theory to be put forth But I do know, I mean, it does happen where one parent will talk bad about the other parent, and they say it's alienation, and I get that.
Right. But
But
you could, I always say this, just say that. Don't call it this catch-all term. Say my ex-wife is constantly saying I'm a bad guy, and now my kids believe her. What did that take? Like 4 seconds? It's like you
Yeah.
want to save the 4 seconds by calling it parental alienation.
But Mike, I'll give the devil's
Go
advocate view on this.
Mm-hmm.
If, and I've said it before, I've published before on this. I said if there was a pill that cured quote unquote parental alienation, it would be included in the DSM tomorrow. To your
Right.
point, Representative Fink. The fact is that, but there are 6 or so underlying conditions that are recognized in the DSM that are underlying conditions in the literature about parental alienation that are DSM included. I think but put that to the side. People reasonable minds can differ about quote unquote parental alienation, quote unquote coercive control, any of these types of identified legal/medical terms, because they're different. I think the bigger issue, and I think you hit on it, was the reunification camps. I think that there's a growing consensus across the board, especially these ones where they kidnap the children and take them away. They're a form of
torture. That's no longer allowed in Arizona.
They're no longer allowed anywhere in the country after I believe after that Paris Hilton bill. I think that the federal law is applicable to those many of those sleepaway camps as well. I think that there's a growing consensus that the reunification therapy, and especially in its worst iterations, but clearly as a discipline is questionable at best.
Right. But there is still some efforts to still have that reunification camp, but they're trying to rename it.
Right. All right. But
careful.
Didn't you guys write the law that if you try to call it something else, but it's the same thing, that's not going to fly? And I've got one of my best articles up. The Association of Family and Conciliation Courts, they may not be singularly responsible for the growth of this term, but they're heavily involved. This is a trade group. They promoted it. They put out a bunch of literature about it. And of course, a lot of their members also created reunification camps. And what AFCC does is they will put out a lot of literature that says whatever the problem is, you appoint someone. And so as far as parental alienation is concerned, there's so much literature. This, that, and the other court appointee is a great way to fix it. And, when you asked the judge, if you asked like a bigwig at AFCC if they were honest, they'd say, yeah, no, we think the courts are an avenue to fix families. They absolutely promote like ways to fix families, and always the way is to appoint someone at $200 to $400 an hour. They won't say the $200 to $400 an hour part, but to appoint someone, and then they'll fix them. So if you were asking where this term like proliferated, a lot of that is AFCC. You mentioned 50-50. We can have a good debate about that. Now, Senator Fincham, I think, was against the idea that it should be the presumed, like that you start with 50-50. I think State Representative Keschel was the same way. Where are you on that?
Well, actually, I sponsored the bill with Representative Keschel co-sponsoring it, and I had talked with previous the representative senators that were behind the bill that presumed 50-50, and there is a push against it. And even some of the parents that testified, there's differences of opinion. But what we found is that with that presumption of 50-50, it actually puts more on, it puts more on the parental rights or what the parents want versus what's the child's best interest. So,
but the proponents will say it's fair and we should do what's fair, and what's fair is what's best for the children.
They may say that, but again, if that's truly fair, but what's happened is that we need to go through the child's best interest, because what it is fair, but yes, if there's abuse, if there's other types of things.
But there's a rebuttable presumption always as far as abuse, isn't there?
I don't see it as much in regards to.
All right, now I am completely against it. I always play devil's advocate, but the best argument, maybe I can find it, was done by a member of parliament in Australia, where that was the national law until the end of 2023. And the first point he made was that in 75% of cases where abuse was alleged, they still force 50-50. Because what would happen is judges see it, that's best. So if you're saying abuse, you just don't want to go along with the program. I don't believe it. But the best argument, and I think he quoted from Nabokov, but he said all families are different, and yet you want one size fits all. And so that's really the best argument. You're basically saying all families are the same, and that's ludicrous. And look, Elon Musk fought hard with the amount of money he spent, he wipes his butt with, but to get joint custody, and then he just handed the kids off to a nanny. That's according to his daughter. So Elon Musk may not be an abuser, but there's no way he deserves 50-50. He works like 5 million hours a week. He's not going to be around the kids. It's ridiculous to say he should get them 50% of the time. But Rich, I don't know if he's passionate about this, but he probably has a couple of questions to grill you on 50-50. Go ahead.
I can ask you about 50-50. That it's you have states like Florida, where I am, that has 50-50, and it seems to cut down on a lot of the acrimony in the divorce, in the allegations that are levied by the trial lawyers, or it becomes a character assassination. Go to other states that don't have 50-50, like a California or a Connecticut or a New York. The trial lawyers rule the roost. So I'll have two questions there. Do you see 50-50 as a way to cut down on the acrimony? And part B, what effect do the trial lawyers lobby have in Arizona on the formulation of these laws?
Well, I don't necessarily have the best answers for all of that from being new to the legislature, but with the 50-50, I don't say necessarily decreasing the acrimony in regards to that, because especially when there's the abuse and all of that. So it provides the opportunity, like Michael mentioned, is that with that presumption of 50-50, we find the abusers and those getting the children when they should not be, and again, because they're using that instead of the child's best interest. So I think the child's best interest is by far the best way to go. Now, in regards to the trial lawyers, they're working well under this system right now, so I don't know how it would change.
They always find a way. Isn't that amazing? They always find a way.
Because they're using it, they're prolonging it by getting more money, continuing the acrimony, like you talked about. Hey, that person doesn't deserve 50, or there's abuse or whatever. So from the many examples, I don't see that necessarily being different.
I think 50-50 can work in certain situations. I know people who have had it, but it's definitely case by case. But I don't know why you think splitting the kids equal in an acrimonious situation where one is accusing the other one of abuse, the other one saying those are lies. Why you think if you then say, okay, now you guys are going to have them week on, week off in a situation like that, why you think that's best? You're asking two people who want as little to do with each other as possible to have as much to do with each other as possible.
The fact that
listen, if I had to split my son with my ex-girlfriend 50-50, I don't know what I would be doing right now.
The fact of evidence, though, that you're saying is you're saying that there's abuse. Okay, we have to figure out how many of the cases, what percentage are abuse present and what percentage aren't, and then 50-50 versus no 50-50. Where are the false abuse claims? We know that there are silver bullet claims. We know that there are people swear to things to gain an advantage, and the acrimony that we're talking about is false claims of abuse. And those devalue real claims of abuse, real domestic violence victims, real abuse victims that are lumped in with other false claims in the system is a problem. So I think the 50-50 does tend to reduce that, because they walk into the lawyer and the lawyer says, no matter what you say, unless you have very clear abuse, it's going to be 50-50. As opposed to a lawyer that says, if you have anything that they've ever done wrong, ever in their life, if they looked you the wrong way, if they locked you on the patio inadvertently, if they did this, if they did that, if they smoked a cigarette and didn't put it out, that's going to be a sign of abuse, and we want to get that all in. That's the point that I'm trying to make. Are there false claims of abuse that come in non-50-50 systems, or a larger incidence of those because of attorney manufactured issues and silver bullet concerns? That's my point.
Well, and I don't see any data for one or the other. So, and my thing, see, we don't have the data for that. And so I'm of the opinion that Michael has, that we can't do a one size fits all. We have two of the lawyers that were on the original committee in 2013 that created the law that we have now, which included the 50-50, and they were not for it. Because again, that it actually can also cause acrimony in the sense, or what's not best for the child is what's best for the parent. So it's more of a parental rights approach versus a child's best interest.
Right. I agree with that. But we won't settle it here. But what the other proponents 50-50 say is what like in Arizona, it didn't work because the language was too vague, and you have to like really hammer it home. Is that the problem? Maybe it should be less vague in Arizona, and that will like get rid of all the acrimony.
Actually, talking with those that were behind the bill, it was that their position is that the judges aren't following the best interest.
All right.
That's what it is. So they're not following the best interest.
In Australia, and I don't think that country is very different from ours. What happened was because 50-50 was presumed, judges very quickly in their minds said 50-50 is best for the child. And so the two became synonymous. And that's why 75% of abuse, Sally, you think 75% of the women, mostly women, came forward, they were lying. I believe there's lots of false allegations. I don't think it was 75%. And I think the number was like 95% of the final arrangements were 50-50 because it was presumed. But that's what happened in Australia. People just ignore another country which did the exact thing that you all are saying we should do, and ignore. You want data? Get 20 years worth of actual data from another country, speaks our language. Maybe because it's really cold there now, everything's different as far as 50-50. And I wanted to ask you about this. I don't think you're leading this, but there is a scandal with Department of Children's Safety, and I think the legislature has formed something similar to your guys' committee to look at DCS. So what happened?
Actually, I'm kind of involved with that as well, because it will be coming before the House Government Committee. But what it is yes, we've had kids die in custody, in particular from the group homes. They're running away. I could actually speak quite a bit to this as well. But there was if there's problems, then there's in the statute says there's a joint legislative oversight committee would be created. And so they did do that. However, it was behind closed doors. So we don't know everything about it. But I am working with my chairman in the government committee, Representative Walt Blackman. And he's planning on having open hearing committees because they're coming up. But yes.
What is your sense, like if you explained it in about a minute, what is the problem?
They're not following the law.
Again, right. Now, and I know I did an article about AZDCS a few years ago. The way they tried to fix it, they said, I think in 2014, they made it rather than rather than being like a part of DHS, they made it a cabinet level agency. So it was like the governor was going to appoint the cabinet person. They were directly answerable to the governor, and that was going to fix everything. But clearly it hasn't.
No. I will tell. Oh, go ahead.
How much of that is on the governor? The governor is the one appointing the head of DCS now. Are you guys, is the governor constantly appointing bad heads?
I can't explain as to her selection process. But what we have found out is, and I'm actually working with people with legislators across the aisle as well, that we're the waiver, for DCS, they're supposed to work toward getting kids out of the group homes into, foster or kinship care. I had a kinship care bill to take basically what DCS is supposed to be doing according to the policy and codify it into law. Unfortunately, that got vetoed. So I will be running that again in its original form and get that through. But we saw where kids go missing, that almost 60% are from the group homes. But kinship care is like this little sliver, and that's it.
And kinship care, for those who don't know, it's like a family member.
Yeah,
or possibly a neighbor, or someone who knows
fictive parent.
the parents. All right, now what I'm getting from you, and I do want to mention, you're a Republican, Governor Hobbs is a Democrat, but the legislature is trying to fix this, both on TCS and family court, and it seems to end up on the governor's desk, and she's vetoing it. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's what I'm getting from you.
That's basically it. Yes.
All right, Rich, you got
I'm
any
not putting
other?
words into my mouth because you can
I,
see it
before
documented.
Rich, I want to make sure I ask you. We asked Representative Keschel and Representative Fincham. They think this can be a legislative issue that you can paint Governor Hobbs as anti-family and say, no, these four bills came in front of her desk. Here's how they were going to help families, and she vetoed all of them. That she's a tool. Um, the the reason I'm still suspect is I at least traditionally, the way the issue works is if you're going through it, it consumes your life, but people outside of it don't feel like a kinship, if you will, to the people who are going through it. So there's not enough people voting who are going through it to make a difference. But I think that things are changing because, as I said, people who are going through it, they're telling their friends, their neighbors, their coworkers, so everybody's hearing about it. So do you think this can be a legislative issue? Is this something you can paint Governor Hobbs as anti-family with?
Absolutely. And
All right.
actually, we've had one. Actually, I'm working on neglect. If you notice that Maricopa County,
Mm-hmm.
in regards to DCS, we have more kids taken out of homes than anywhere in the country. Why
Per
is that?
capita? Per
Per
capita?
capita. Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yes. And so why is that? And, we have the neglect issues. And anyway, I could go into several other stories in regards to that. But we need to make sure and preserve the family. I know there's abusive families, but what we've also seen, it's kind of the same thing in the family courts. It seems like the courts are putting the kids with the abusive parent. We're seeing also sometimes, a lot of times with DCS, they're putting the kids back into abusive situations.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yet there's the ones that aren't in abusive situations and they're being taken out. So,
Mm-hmm.
what is the policy on that? And also in regards to the missing or the children that end up gone from these homes. What's very interesting, and we've got some simple legislation in regards to DCS, is that right now, when the kids are missing, in particular from the group homes, because that's the main source of these missing children, the other one is unlicensed foster homes. They're counted as runaways, and so you don't have to go after and find them. And so what we need to do is change and say that they're missing until we can prove basically that they're runaways. So we actually go out and find them. The other thing is again, by law, they're supposed to have pictures of these kids and immediately put them up onto the National Children's Missing Registry. 75% of kids, we don't have up-to-date photos. How do you find a kid if you don't know what they look like? And so there's just some simple things that they're not doing. And I think, yes, it's under the governor and all that, but the House and the Senate, we have the power of the purse. So
Right.
let's use that power to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing to protect these kids, and that we don't have, the amount of missing kids we have is shocking. It's in the hundreds, and it's like,
Right.
where did they go? And
They don't, once you wind up in the system, that is the worst thing. I think in 90% of cases, kids are better with their abusive parents than in foster care. I think even in real cases of abuse, I think the kid has a better chance of thriving in life than if you throw them in the foster home. Rich, you've got a few questions? I think I'm kind of monopolizing it.
So I will comment that the big problem is sadism with these groups. And I actually wrote an article a couple of months ago about the social worker turned governor questioning whether she was a sadist. But I'll put that aside for now and ask a little bit about legislative strategy. And not just in family court, but specifically for this conversation about family court, but the strategy about how the sausages are made, and who gets to sponsor and co-sponsor bills, and what because I've seen it in different legislatures where there's a blanket strategy. They get everyone to sign on to the bill, as a thing where, okay, we're going to get it and we're going to put it in. Others, they take the bills that are less controversial and give it to the more controversial members, and the controversial give it to the less controversial members. And I've heard a lot about what's going on in Arizona with respect to the family court stuff. What are you talking about with your colleagues on how to get this onto the desk and accepted by an oppositional governor, the social worker turned governor?
Basically, what we're going to need to do, and we do have many, is we're going to have to get Democrats on board as well, to be able to either co-sponsor or that. So to be able to show that there is bipartisan support on our end, and therefore, this is not a partisan issue.
Right.
That's what we're going to have to do. And I will tell you, I have, like I said, one of my bills is actually Democrat initially had it sponsored. And I said, I like your bill. And she goes, well, it's not going to get past the vice sponsor. So it's okay. We're going to work together and we'll try and get that through. It's about neglect in regards to taking kids out with DCS. Same thing with family court. I had, again, friends across the aisle saying, yeah, my family's dealt with this. Yeah, we need to take care of this. So it's like, and in fact, I had people that are in my district that I've been helping out with the family court. They're Democrats. They voted for me. This is not a partisan issue.
But they are, I think anecdotally, it shows my point. They are hearing from friends and family. And that's because what was happening 10 to 15 years ago, if this happened to you, there was a stigma. You had so if you're not allowed to see your kids, you're a really bad parent. So you don't want to broadcast that because of the stigma. And over time, people, instead of being embarrassed, got mad. And now they're just telling anyone who will listen. And so a lot of people know someone who this has happened to. That's what makes it more personal. Rich, anything else you wanted to add?
I wanted to talk about just a little bit more generally. You've been active in parental rights movement on issues like protecting schools from radical gender ideology, inappropriate materials, those sorts of things. National conservative figures echo these priorities. How important do you think that these cultural battles are for the country's direction? The gorilla in the room is Charlie Kirk. I'll just go out there and say it. And how should the leaders balance these fights with other policy priorities?
Well, these cultural things, to me, is essential to the survival of our nation. I'll just say that right now. The family is the most important unit, and the founders recognized that. So now, to legislate all this is not the best way at all, because that becomes a totalitarian type of government. Because if we're out of, say we're the good people and the bad people get in, they're going to, whatever precedents we set, it's going to go the other direction. So we have to be careful of that. But in regards to, like I said, protecting parental rights, and also the fact is we do need to make laws. I tell people in the Declaration of Independence, it says, according to the laws of nature and of nature's God. Okay. And then also that our governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed. So that's something that is important to take into consideration and being able to protect, because governments are supposed to protect the rights of its citizens. And if we don't do that, then that, we're complicit in being able to, in regards to our country going in a very bad direction. So, culturally, we can't necessarily say, okay, you have to believe this or that. That's not our role. But we can make sure that the laws that we do have are according to the natural law that has been set forth in regards to the founding of this country, if that makes sense.
I think what you're more going for is not to force kids to hear like gender ideology. And that's a euphemism, not to hear about transvestites, transgender, right? That's what you want. You want to give parents the power to say, I don't want my child. That shouldn't be a part of any kind of core curriculum. And if you're teaching that, I should have the power to pull my kid out of school for that, at least for that class. Am I right?
Yes, I'm exactly right. And but also what we put forth is that if they're planning on teaching anything, I mean, that parents have the right to review that. And like I said, and then pull them out. And also the fact is that
isn't this a like county and city issue and not a state issue? Isn't the best person to make that decision closer to the actual school?
Yes, it is to the school, but there is some again, protecting the rights is at the state level. So what ours was protecting those parental rights, which we again, you talked about the 14th Amendment. I also consider the Ninth Amendment in regards to that. So preserving those rights, because the thing is if you also study communism, their effort is to what? To the family, to destroy it.
To break it up, yeah.
Okay. And so we need to make sure
Because
that
the state is the family.
yes, the state is the family.
Or as Hillary Clinton once said, it takes a village to raise a child.
Yeah, it's a mom and a dad.
Right,
and so therefore, we at the state level, we do have that in place. We do need to protect those rights. But yes, how they do it should be done down at the school district level or the charter level or whatever.
Right.
But the parents also have to have recourse. So
okay, all right. So I think you're not going to like set state curriculum criteria, but you will give parents their rights. Rich, anything else you want to add?
No,
Then your thoughts on Charlie Kirk's murder? I'm sure it affected you. Did you know him? Did you know turning points? How did all of that affect you?
I did attend the memorial. It was devastating. Actually, Utah Valley University. I graduated from Brigham Young University. I went by there all the time. And actually, my niece was actually right there to the side of where he was at. And anyway, it was devastating for her. But I think, it was awful that he was assassinated for, free speech.
Right.
And what my concern is too is that this has created. I mean, we're seeing a section of our society that are celebrating assassination, and that to me is very disturbing.
Representative Keschel spotted a city council person in Tucson. Have you noticed anybody with influence, like a politician in your area that was doing the same thing? The lady she called it karma, I think. She was celebrating his death. Did you notice anybody else doing that in your area?
Not in my district, which is good.
Okay.
I have part of Phoenix, Peoria, and Glendale, Arizona, and I didn't see anything. So,
okay. I agree with you on all of that. One problem I have with conservatives is saying they killed him. So far, one person killed him. Possibly there's a plot. But even if there's a plot, it would be the 5 to 10 people who were involved in a conspiracy. You think it's fair to say they, obviously meaning either the left or the radical left, but did they kill him, or is the responsibility of the shooter?
Well, whoever pulled the trigger is responsible, whatever. So, but if there are those that were part of that to make it happen,
right. But you think like someone calling Charlie Kirk a Nazi or a racist, are they responsible?
No, I don't think so. I go back to because they call it hate speech, and I just want to put this plug out there. We do not want to do hate speech because John Locke is one of the he made a comment which was or an argument, and he says that the thoughts and the minds of a person is under what we call the religious magistrate. Okay, so that's why you can talk to your pastor, you have and all that. But once it crosses into where you did something, now it's under the civil magistrate. So when we say we're going to charge them with a hate crime, you're charging them for what they think or thought. That is actually the merging of church and state. We don't want.
Right. Can you mention what you just said to the Attorney General of the United States, Pam Bondi? She seems to be confused a little bit.
Well, my understanding is that there's been some blowback on that, as it should be.
Some, yeah. All right. She was confused about Supreme Court precedent, which is a little bit concerning given her role in the administration. Yeah. Rich doesn't like any kind of criticism of anything related to MAGA. But go ahead, Rich. You might want to add a few things.
Just a follow-up to that. I know that the Representative Keschel was talking about the concern that the president has about paid agitators, particularly dark money, and a national security issue. If these are plans of subversion that are being hatched in Beijing, in Tehran, and in other places that are hostile to America, in order to turn our society and rip it at its seams. Do you see this as a national security issue?
I do. And actually, I have studied communism. And one of the things that they try and do is they try to split people up into groups, because then you can divide them. And, and then, of course, as Abraham Lincoln said, a house that's divided can't stand. So, yes, it is a national security issue in regards to that. And those paid agitators and whoever's pushing that, yeah, they need to be, receive the law and consequences thereof.
Right. I know where you should start. The guy's last name is SOROS. So if there were paid agitators, I'm pretty sure some of that money came from him. Go ahead, Rich.
Yeah.
Rich.
No, I heard Soros isn't alone for this world. I don't wish death on anyone, but his son will be taking over very shortly. That's how
He made his money making sure that England was about to go bankrupt, but it was allowed. So, Representative Fink, anything else you wanted to add? Any question? You can ask yourself a question and answer it.
Okay. I'm just trying to think. I guess my question is to myself, I guess you could say, how can we help turn our country back into the republic and the freedom that our founders wanted? And my thing is that the answer would be is what the founders called the civic virtue or public virtue. They considered it the glue to keeping our republic. And what that means is that we enforce ourselves, and this is what Charlie Kirk, did talk quite a bit of. We enforce ourselves instead of having the state enforce us. Instead, teaching those Judeo-Christian principles. So I asked my kids, how many laws would we need if everybody was honest?
Mm-hmm.
Not too many. Okay. So if we want to return our country back into, like I said, the republic that we have, we need to install those virtues so that we are completely honest, that we follow that in regards to don't steal, don't kill, don't covet, all of those things that are encompassed in the Ten Commandments, but also throughout Judeo-Christian theology. And I'm not saying you have to be a member of either one of those religions, but what I'm saying is that those virtues will bring freedom, true freedom.
I agree with that. And it's the philosophy is definitely what the country is based on. Representative Fink, thank you for being here.
Thank you.